Hi, I'm Karen Elliott. Coming up on Southern Accents, we'll explore the beautiful port city of Mobile, Alabama. The tours are fascinating, the seafood delicious, and the inns are simply charming. We'll enjoy all this and more in the City on the Bay. Mobile's skyline is sure to impress, and it won't take you long to discover this city is proud of its past and loves sharing with tourists. Mobile was founded in 1702. The French settlers introduced the first observance of Mardi Gras to the New World, and Mobile enthusiastically continues the celebration today. It sits on the northwestern shore of Mobile Bay, and you don't want to miss a walk along the waterfront. A very restrictive tree trimming and cutting policy has preserved some of the oldest magnolias and live oaks in the country. There are lots of great restaurants, but with the Gulf nearby, the fresh seafood here can't be beat. Make your first stop Fort Condé, right downtown. It's a replica of the fort that was built by the French in the early 1700s. It's also home to the Mobile Welcome Center and a great place to pick up brochures and discount coupons. Mobile has layers of history that are guaranteed to intrigue, and one of my favorite ways to delve into a city's past is with a walking tour. I enlisted the expertise of local architect and historian Craig Roberts. He offers a variety of tours that can be tailored to suit your interests and schedule. Our first stop was the oldest Protestant church in the state, Christ Church, founded in 1822.
This church houses the finest examples of church stained glass in the United States. The bell here was in the steeple that crashed through the sanctuary in 1906 in a very bad hurricane. The miracle was that it didn't hurt or destroy any of the stained glass. Now, it's interesting, the techniques of the different glass makers are very different. For instance, Tiffany made use of the opalescence in the glass. For instance, the lantern here in the morning, you can see when the sun comes through, it shines light on Jesus' robe. The only thing that he painted were the hands, the feet, and the face. As opposed to another technique, a Franz Mayer, this is a Franz Mayer from Germany, there's paint on every piece. Every piece is faux to look like another material or painted to look like crown molding or anything else all over it. It's just another technique. Very different, equally beautiful, but different.
Another historic church, an active place of worship, is the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception.
So Karen, as we look across Cathedral Square here in front of our beautiful Catholic cathedral, you can see in the distance two tall buildings. Now, most cities our size with less than 200,000, very few cities of 200,000 have tall buildings like that. To have so many beautiful historic buildings, 6,000 buildings listed on the National Register, 600 square blocks of historic districts, and yet we still appreciate our tall contemporary new contemporary architecture. Catholic Cathedral took 60-something years to build. The front is Greek Revival, started in 1830, but the towers with the gold domes were finished in the Victorian age of 1898, so they're very Victorian. And there are only 64 minor basilicas on earth, this being one of them. All of the major basilicas are in Rome, Italy. So we feel like this is very special. The reason it was given this status is because it's the oldest congregation outside of the original colonies in the United States. If you look up You'll see clovers and fleur-de-lis. The fleur-de-lis for the French heritage. The clovers for the Irish Catholics that came here from Boston and New York before the Civil War, who were already very wealthy men, to make bigger fortunes in cotton trading and banking. And Mobile, by 1860, was the third wealthiest banking center in the nation and the third busiest port in the nation.
And it's still a popular port.
That's right, the 9th largest in the country.
Tell me about the naval vessels they're building out on the water.
Well, there's a company from Australia actually building the new military battleships called littoral battleships. They're huge battleships that can fly across shallow water.
Craig, thank you so much for this tour. It's been wonderful.
Well, you're welcome, and it's been a pleasure of mine. I've had a great time.
Next on my agenda was to learn about Mardi Gras, so I headed to the Mobile Carnival Museum.
You're going to see some float replicas, of which we see behind us here, as well as we have a history film, and then we have 14 galleries here in the museum which showcase the royal aspect of Mardi Gras, all the regal royal robes of monarchs that have reigned over Mardi Gras. They're all custom created and made right here in Mobile, and they're just absolutely astounding. Mardi Gras is predicated on the Lenten calendar, so Fat Tuesday is actually the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, which begins the Lenten season.
How many different groups are taking part in parades?
Currently, we have about 35 to 40 parades at any given time. It spans a 2.5 week. That's the public side of Mardi Gras. Then the private side, of course, is the royal side, and that's what you get to see here in the museum as well.
And the royalty is selected on what basis?
Well, we at the Mobile Carnival Association like to reward our families who have contributed to Mardi Gras and kept it going throughout the years. This is our Moore Gallery, and I noticed that you said wow, because a lot of times we refer to this as our wow room, because you cannot imagine the amount of time people say wow when they walk in. But in this gallery is where you can compare and contrast the individual robes through the years. You can see the detail. And following the public coronation, the king hosts a dansante, which is the king's supper. And we'll have upwards of 1,200 to 1,500 people come and enjoy that meal. So it's a wonderful party, and that's open to the public.
And so if I'm visiting Mobile and plan ahead, I can enjoy the celebration.
You sure can. We would love to have you come down and spend some Mardi Gras with us.
Ready for an early dinner, I headed to a popular local landmark, Winsel's Oyster House, where the oysters are fried, stewed, or nude.
J. Oliver Winsel opened Winsel's Oyster House as a 6-stool oyster bar in 1938. So we've got a lot of history. Many Mobilians tried their first oyster at our oyster bar.
Any clue, Clay, how many oysters you all shuck a day?
Last year, we estimate that we shucked about 1.3 million Gulf oysters. At this location specifically, I think on average we shuck about 10,000 a week.
Ooh, Clay, that is such a nice, fresh taste. That is great. I love those.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And I'm glad I have a few more.
I'm glad you do too.
Clay, if I really want to get into oysters, what's my best option?
Well, I think you should try the oyster sampler. The oyster sampler includes 16 oysters of 4 varieties. So the first is a char-grilled oyster, which is a freshly shucked oyster grilled over an open flame. Then we have 3 baked varieties. You can't beat it if you want to try all of them. The sampler is definitely the way to go. But we also have a variety of signature seafood dishes, like our redfish bienbowl. It's a redfish chopped with a creamy Parmesan sauce. We're also known for our award-winning gumbo.
Oh, look at that fish.
That is some good gumbo. Nice depth of flavor, loaded with fish, little bit of kick at the end of the bite. I see why the locals have this as a favorite.
It's hard to resist dessert here, particularly the specialty of the house, award-winning bread pudding.
It's topped with a warm rum sauce. It's delicious. In 1938, when J. Oliver Winslow opened Winslow's, he was known throughout town for his civic involvement, but he was also known for his homespun sayings. He had all these ideas and started writing down things and putting signs on the wall to keep guests interested while they were waiting on their food. So we have thousands and thousands of these widely read witticisms.
After dinner, I headed to the Mulligan Inn. This charming building has a fascinating history, and it's centrally located to every attraction I wanted to visit.
We're only 3 blocks from the entertainment district, so we're very centrally located. We are sort of Mardi Gras Central. There's a parade every day except Wednesdays for 2.5 weeks, and they all start behind us and they end behind us. It's nice.
Give me a history of the inn and how you settled on the name.
My mother opened the hotel in 1968. And at the time, she was working with the city to make Malaga, Spain, Mobile's sister city. So for some reason, she named this hotel Mulligan Inn. The historic part of the hotel is made up of 2 townhouses built in 1862. 2 sisters had their husbands build identical houses next door to each other. So the lobby was the yard between the 2 homes.
How many rooms do you have here?
We have 35 rooms and 3 suites. The combinations of rooms are 2 full beds, 2 queen beds, king beds. Some of our rooms have private balconies, so it can be very romantic. The courtyard in the evening is very romantic with the gas lights, and it's quiet.
And what about families? Do you welcome children?
Oh, absolutely. We welcome children. We have a swimming pool that they all seem to enjoy, and we have complimentary candy in the lobby, which
That all ages enjoy.
That all ages enjoy, absolutely.
What surprises guests the most about a stay here?
Probably our secret tunnel and our secret room.
All right, come on down.
It's in one of the homes. There's a fake floor, and you actually crawl through a dirt tunnel under the house, and there's a secret room at the end, and it has a cot in it, and it is not a metal cot, it's a wooden cot.
What was it used for?
We don't know. We don't know.
Popular spot for weddings, Julie.
Oh, absolutely. We have a wedding almost every weekend in the spring and the fall.
Is there a time of year when a stay might be particularly affordable?
Yes, the summer. Yes. In the summer, we lower our prices a bit because it's warm and it's really our off season. January through June is probably our busiest time. People like to stay with us because we know who they are. We will do anything necessary to make a guest happy and comfortable here, and I think it shows.
Just a short drive from the inn, you'll encounter this imposing sight. That's the USS Alabama, which helped our Navy achieve victory in World War II. Each year, more than 300,000 visitors tour the ship and Memorial Park.
The ship is longer than 2 football fields, 680 feet long, and but she had a crew of 2,500 men, and you think about 2,500 people living in a box that was 680 feet by 108 feet by 191, and so consequently, it really amazes them when they come and they see the big guns and all the big things outside, and when they get inside and see the small compartments, that's the way life was in World War II in a battleship that was out in the middle of the South Pacific.
Bill, what kind of action did she see in the Pacific?
She actually saw significant action in 9 major places, especially around the Philippines, and her radar actually spotted the incoming Japanese aerial attack for the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. She ended the war actually leading the American fleet into Tokyo Bay the day after the surrender documents were signed. The big guns, there's 3 turrets of 3 each 16-inch 45 caliber guns that would fire a 2,700-pound projectile 20.91 miles and could hit a dime, but you'd never find the dime after that. But she also has other guns here. She with a total of 129 guns on the ship. She actually shot down 22 aircraft as well. It was a great concentrated effort for all American forces, but Battleship Alabama was right there in the thick of things.
When I walk around, it strikes me rough seas.
Oh yeah.
What it was like to be on this deck and how precarious.
This ship actually went through 2 typhoons, and this ship weighs about 90 million pounds, about 45,000 tons, and she was literally tilted at 32 degrees. I can't even imagine that myself, but up in the upper levels, the guy said they would open the compartment doors, look outside, and they'd be looking straight at the water.
Oh.
So just imagine. Rough seas, and there was nowhere to go.
Yet there were a few simple pleasures on board.
They showed new motion pictures on the fantail outside on the back of the ship. Who would ever think that you'd have a working soda fountain on a World War II battleship that made these 2 ice cream machines, made about 100 gallons of ice cream a day?
Could they come down here anytime?
Anytime they weren't getting shot at, yeah. And have a candy bar or some type of milkshake or little perks, but when you're in the middle of the ocean and somebody can shoot you out or sink you, that's a small consolation. Thank God for them.
Allow at least 3 hours for your visit. Some guests spend an entire day because there is so much to see.
We honor Army, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and of course obviously the Navy here, and so consequently you're going to see artifacts. You'll see 2 national historic landmarks, one being the battleship, one being the submarine USS Drum, which is actually America's oldest existing World War II submarine. You'll see 28 aircraft from all of the flying services. You see tanks and memorials and everything, so plus 175 acres. We want them to walk away with a little experience of maybe just a touch of what it was like. And they were in the South Pacific where it's 20 degrees warmer than our warmest 100-degree days here. So quite an effort for them to have that good feel of what it was like for young Americans to give all.
If you're ready for lunch, there's another favorite for fresh seafood nearby. Ed's Seafood Shed.
You know, most of the seafood that we get comes right through by La Battery, right over here. You know, it's just right on the south side of Mobile Bay. And you know, when the doors were first opened in 2000, the joke was, you know, the saying was that if it's not fried, it's not here, except grits, greens, and gumbo.
Watching plate after plate of fried seafood go by, I had to try the fried shrimp, and I was not disappointed.
We serve a domestic Gulf white shrimp, and you know, it's a real clean shrimp. It tastes great. You know, the taste is just unmatched. The ahi tuna, sushi grade ahi tuna that we coat in coarse ground pepper and sear it on the grill and then slice it thin. You can't go wrong with that. You can't come to the area without having raw oysters. And you know, these are fresh local oysters. We just shucked these a couple of minutes ago. The Gulf's a really salty body of water, and you know, that kind of translates into the seafood that we get out. Has a lot of flavor. These things are super fresh. We've got a very knowledgeable staff, very friendly staff that knows what they're doing, and they really love taking care of the guests.
Located right on the water, there are wonderful views and open-air dining spaces.
The lower deck is completely open. We keep umbrellas to kind of give us a little shade from the sun, but we also have an upper deck that's covered and that we enclose it in case it starts to rain, so we keep everybody dry. And we drop the vinyls and turn the heaters on in the winter.
Before I left the Mobile area, I had one more must-see on my list: Belen Gardens and Home in Theodore, Alabama.
Belen Gardens and Home is the premier garden of the Gulf Coast and has been since 1932. This has beautiful gardens and structures in the gardens, and then at the center is the Belen Home designed by the same architect that designed the gardens.
Filled with world-class antiques.
Yes, Mrs. Belen was collecting from the time she married around 1906 until she died in 1943.
Tell me about this remarkable couple. They were interesting.
They're very interesting and completely self-made. Walter Belen was a telegraph key operator for the L&N Railroad, and his older brother, William, found out that they were offering a franchise to bottle Coca-Cola. So they bought that franchise for $1,500. They split the territory, and Walter came to Mobile because, in his words, he liked to fish. Now, we're on a body of water here called the Foul River, which empties into Mobile Bay and then into the Gulf of Mexico.
Bessie Bellengrath set about turning this overgrown property into a world-class garden.
She started bringing azaleas and camellias down here and cuttings and playing around, and saw the potential and then hired an architect around 1927, and for the next 5 years they worked on putting in all the water features and walkways. In 1932, when they opened to the public for a Sunday afternoon and had 4,700 people show up down here, and one Sunday afternoon, they decided, well, we're going to just open in the springtime, and in the middle, by June, they were private again. But the problem was, they knew so many people in town, people would have visitors, and they would just drive in the midst of family events down here. So they got the architect back that had designed all the gardens, George Rogers, and George Rogers created this house. And it was started in the beginning of 1935, and they moved in July of 36. And it has 10,500 square feet and 15 rooms. We have guides that have been here, most of them many years, and have great stories about the Bellengraths. This is called a pedestal sideboard, and it's from the William IV period, 1830s in England. The opening would have held something Mrs. Bellengrath would have no use for, a container to hold wine. The thing I like to talk about are these sterling silver peacocks. They're table garnitures, and they're actually patterned after drinking vessels made in Germany in the 1500s and 1600s, given as ceremonial gifts. But these were created probably in the 1890s, and they just look pretty on the table, and they've always been in this room.
They are very compassionate people on both sides.
Yes. Well, Mrs. Bellengrath, during the height of the Depression, she'd had friends who would tell her about situations they'd heard about, that somebody's son ought to be going to college, there was no money. Somebody's daughter ought to be going to college, there was no money. And she'd introduce herself very politely, and she'd point out an azalea, a camellia, a gardenia, something in bloom that looked halfway decent, and she said, we don't have one like that at Bellengrath Gardens. We really would need it. Could you please sell it to me? And she was offering between $400 and $600 for a single shrub. Now that would be in the thousands of dollars today, so she helped a lot of people that way. Now Mr. Bellengrath, my favorite story about him is he was sitting at a Rotary Club meeting, and this fellow Rotarian was saying his only child, his daughter, was getting married to a serviceman, and he was being called overseas within just a week or so, and that they had 1 or 2 nights in New Orleans before he shipped out, but there was no hotel room available. Mr. Bellengrath walked over and said, you tell them to go to the Roosevelt Hotel, I'll call over there, they'll have a room. It was the Bellengrath's personal suite. And that poor young man said, oh my word, he said, I can't afford this. There's no way I can afford this. And the man said, you're not paying for it, Mr. Bellengrath's paying for this.
Tom, Mr. Bellengrath was deeply devoted to Mrs. Bellengrath.
Yeah, she died. She'd had some illness, but her death was completely unexpected in 1943. He decided, you know, I have no children. What am I going to do with all this? I don't want to see it subdivided. I don't want to see someone come and sell my wife's things off, because it meant a lot to her. So he set up a foundation dedicated to her. So we are charged to maintain this house and these gardens as a fitting memorial to Bessie Morse Bellingraf, per Mr. Bellingraf. And it was his idea to say this was a year-round garden. And he once said that the gardens at Bellingraf were like a beautiful lady with 52 exquisite gowns, one for every week of the year. In other words, it's changing constantly. Here on the Gulf Coast with a kind of semi-tropical climate we've got and mild winters, you can have flowers 12 months out of the year, and that's our goal.
I hope you've enjoyed our visit to Mobile. This area has it all: history, great restaurants, and beautiful scenery. Remember, before you hit the road, always contact your destination first, because hours of operation may change. From Bellingraf Gardens near Mobile, Alabama, I'm Karen Elliott, wishing you a wonderful experience wherever you travel.
For a copy of this program, call 423-702-7800 or email videoservices@wtcitv.org.